This is a course I've been running now. This is my third year. I'm about to start the meat of the course for this third year running. This was devised as part of our complete revamp of the physics syllabus, and I was asked to put something together for the second half of the second year, and the red words, that's what I was given, the usual things that you're asked to tackle for employability skills: teamwork, problem solving, numeracy, IT communication. But I'd been to lots of talks about this sort of thing, and I decided to try and tackle some other things as well. And I wanted to see if we could bring in time management, leadership, self-awareness and reflective learning has already been mentioned, but in particular commercial awareness, because I felt that the students were coming through and they really didn't know what you can use physics for in the outside world. So that was something I was very keen on. I also went to a very useful presentation by HE STEM, who produced this document on embedded employability. And they did a presentation down in Cardiff Bay, which I found really helpful, with some nice ideas. So I pinched all of those good ideas and several others from the people, some of them are in this room. And so this is how this class works. It's basically problem solving in groups. So we have 90 odd students per year, so we first of all split into 3 groups, because I think you can't really get round a group much bigger than 40. So we have three parallel classes. We allow them to choose their teams, and we choose 4 people per team. 3 is too few and 5 is too many. We think 4 is just perfect if you can have 4. And we start off the course with an initial settling in session where we get a very good science communicator to give a talk on how to give good talks, which goes very well. And then get the teams together, get them talking to each other and discussing amongst themselves what are their strengths and weaknesses, how do they think they would do in the kind of problems I'm going to be setting them. We then have 9 weeks, and I've sourced 9 real problems that somebody's either working on at the moment or has just recently solved. And they're real world, everyday life problems. So design the magnet for an MRI scanner. When you're in an MRI scanner, you're in a huge superconducting magnet. Design one of the next generation ones. Work out how much metal you need to stop lightning blowing a hole in an aeroplane. Design the head camera for a motion capture for films for a company. Do the balloon to launch a 2-ton telescope. That's actually got kit on. It's been launched. It had kit we made in Cardiff, so someone could come and talk about being in Antarctica when it was launched. You know, it's a real problem. And then last year we had a recent student coming to talk to us about designing how you generate power for mobile phone masts in different areas of the world. So according to what the solar radiation's like and the difficulty of getting to the sites. So these are real problems, quite challenging. And these coloured quotes are from the reflective statements, and they're real life problems. They're hard to solve. You have to make assumptions, and you cannot find the answer. You can't Google the answer. And that's a big enlightening moment for many of the students, because they sort of come here thinking that if you look for long enough, you can find the answer to most things on the internet. And I take great trouble to make sure you can't. So they have a weekly task. So first of all, get an introduction to the problem, quite short introduction, and where possible by a visiting speaker. So I get other academics who are involved with the problems, or people from little companies. 2 former students came to help us out, and they just introduce the problem, give the background to it. And we then have a little bit of a brainstorm in the teams. This year I've actually got them whiteboards, so they can brainstorm on a whiteboard. And then we have just a brief whole group discussion in case there are any things that aren't clear about the problem, any stumbling blocks. And then they're off, and they've got the rest of the afternoon to solve the problem, put together their solution, and produce a written report, fully word processed, and given to me by 5 o'clock. And that's possibly the only innovation that I think I introduced, was to make it a real-time challenge. You've got to give me something by 5 o'clock. And that really adds a bit of time pressure, a bit of competitiveness to the situation. I think it means it almost gives them permission to not give you a very good answer. They don't fret about it. They know they've got to make some assumptions and have a go. And it gives them permission to not quite get the right answer. That's okay. The captaincy is rotated. I get them all to take it turns at being the captain of their team. I initially introduced that because I wanted to make sure that the girls weren't disadvantaged, because we do find that the male students tend to dominate in teamwork situations. not yours, Callum, you have very feisty women in your team. But that actually turned out, and it was something I just put in at the last minute. I thought, I know, I'll make them take it in turns, and that just was one of the things they really like. They all have a go at being in charge. Even if they then decide they're not good at being a captain, they've had a chance of doing it. So that's the weekly task, and it's absolutely repetitive. You do the same format every week. And I worried about that the first time we ran it. I thought they're going to be so fed up with this by about week 7. But actually, it isn't repetitive because it's a completely different problem every week. And you have these different speakers. And it helps that it's repetitive because you learn. And so some weeks, every team has a bad week when they can't get the right answer, or they can't get anywhere near a sensible answer, or they run out of time or something. And they learn from that the next week and they do better. So the repetitive nature of it, I think, really helps. They really, really get a lot out of it. So in addition to these sort of 9 big weekly tasks, there are some other things that I get them to do. I set them some preparation homework before each workshop, just to get them thinking about the right area of physics. So it just gets them started a bit quicker. So they do that as a team before the work as well, and that seems to work well. Then every week, one team takes the task away to do in more detail as a project, and then present it back to the whole class the following week, which I nicked from Jeremy. And this works extremely well because the whole class knows what's going on. They're interested because they did the thing last week, so they want to know what this team came up with, and it makes them an informed and interested audience. Whereas most student presentations are terrible because the students listening aren't listening, they're just thinking about what they've got to do. So this really works well. I do recommend it. Sorry, that's a bit small. Okay, so they like that. They like the opportunity to practice doing presentations, and it's only a group of about 30, so it's a nice size group. They also do one challenge problem, which is during the first 8 weeks of the term, where they take one of the problems and do a proper computer model of it, which is another aspect of trying to develop that skill in our students. And then they all do a reflective statement at the end. And even that, although they don't want to do it, when you say you've got to do a reflective statement, when they reflect on it, they realise it's a really good idea. So, and the outcome is of this module that it's really a great success. It's extremely popular with the students. We have virtually no lack of attendance. They all turn up every week, even when they've been given permission not to be there. They sometimes turn up because they want to be with their team. There's a slightly competitive element to it. The high quality of the work, I just can't tell you. By the end of the process, I'm getting reports of a professional quality, often with cover artwork. The teams often have logos. You know, they really take this seriously. And they are very, very keen to realise that and apply this knowledge and actually use it to solve problems that are interesting. And I think it really improves their confidence and their engagement with the whole course. They suddenly see how much they've learnt in the first 18 months and that it's useful. It's not just stuff you learn to pass exams. And they learn some very advanced skills as well. And then they can go off with all that teamwork experience and talk about it in interviews. And that's already happened. They've got experience. I had one student who was in a very difficult team where 2 people didn't get on, and in his statement he was saying we discovered we had to make sure they weren't sitting next to each other, and we gave them 2 things to do where they didn't have to interact very much. I mean, what advanced sort of people managing skills to have learned at such an early age. So fantastic experience. Now, this wasn't set up as in any way an enterprise module. This was strictly employability skills. But then I had Neil and his friends come and audit me, and it turned out that there was lots of enterprise content, sort of by accident. But actually, that's really at the heart of the success of the module, I think. So the students meet real people from the outside world. You know, physics doesn't just happen in universities. They meet people from companies and other organisations outside. And we work on new technology that's really at the very early development stage. So we have people from SMEs who are trying to develop technology to solve problems, and we're looking at feasibility of these technologies. I try to have at least one problem with an international dimension. So this year we're looking at a fridge for vaccines for use in the third world. So something that just brings in that other kind of, the other demands of the international markets. We do look at costs. Sometimes I specifically ask people to look at costs, But for example, in the problem asking about aeroplanes and how you protect them from lightning, I didn't ask them to look at costs, but lots of people did. They went and looked up the cost of copper and the cost of aluminium and worked out how much it would cost to protect your aeroplane using the two different metals. So very interesting, different aspect, and the students like having that opportunity, they're interested. I try to have these sort of topical and important issues, not just sort of completely frivolous things, or you know, and I take time to really try and identify things that I think the students will engage with. And really importantly, some of the problems are open-ended. There is no right answer. One week I asked them to calculate, to estimate how much energy you need to knock down a brick wall. Well, there's lots of different ways you can try and do that. And there's no right answer. And they'll say, well, we thought we'd do this, is that right? And I say, I don't know. Do you think it's right? And as long as they come up with something feasible and they can justify it to me, that's fine. So, no right answer. And I really try to make this as like running a little business as I can. You know, like running a little technical consultancy. You know, you're trying to do all this work against the clock. I mean, I've been in situations where I've had to produce something by 5 o'clock, and that happens in the real world. So I've tried to make it like running a little business. And I ask them to use commercial companies. You know, I give them real-life, up-to-date fact sheets for some of the components I want them to use. In this case, in the MRI scanner week. Is this going to work? Ooh, where did it go? I get to look at the Oxford Instruments website and look up what the different sorts of wires are that they're going to have to use, so they can really design an actual magnet that would work. But while they're there, you never know, they might go and have a look at the careers section, they might go and have a look at the home site. It just gives them a little bit of an exposure to a real British company working at the absolute sort of cutting edge of technology. So, so we do that. So it's fun to do. This is a great course to run. It's quite hair-raising the first few weeks getting going, but listen to what the students say. You know, they say, isn't it interesting talking about physics? And even the professor who's run the Astro one for me, you know, I don't want to go back to teaching this. This is so much more fun doing it like this rather than just lecturing. And this was a comment from a particular student. There's a sort of a received wisdom that teamworking is not liked by the more able student, and that the less able students like it because they get sort of dragged along on the coattails of the more able, but the really top students would rather do something where they can get the very, very top marks all by themselves. But this is one of our very good students who made this remark, and I think even though they perhaps won't get quite such high marks as they would for a sort of classic physics module, all the students really get this module. They really see what they're learning from it and enjoy it and appreciate what they've learned. So we did, through Neil, somebody very kindly analysed the reflective statements, and by frequency of mention, the sort of 4 things that I'd been asked to crack with this module: teamwork, problem solving, public speaking, report writing. Those were sort of items, they came up 2nd to 5th. Communication skills, person to person, is always highlighted, and this is just realising that you have to listen to what people are saying. Notice if someone's stuck, you know, not talk over people, and all those sort of softer personal communication skills are really important and come out of this this module. And this is something that's quite surprising. You might think that physics students would really be very good at all of these computer and research skills, but they're not, actually, when they start. They're not very good at finding reputable, reliable internet sources of information, and they learn to get better, and they learn to be much more critical, and they enjoy the opportunity to have a bit of practice of more advanced use of Excel. They're all working on Google Docs, so you have all 4 of them working simultaneously on one document. You know, they're coming up with new methods for doing these things all the time and teaching me, actually. So they really hone these skills. But the number one thing that they really like is this application of physics to real-world problems. And I think that is the thing that is absolutely at the heart of this whole enterprise and entrepreneurship thing. It's making students realise that what they've learned has a real practical application, and you can use it to solve real problems. And that just lights them up. It's willing to do all this other stuff, which, you know, if you set up a course that's just items 2 to 7, they won't enjoy it. But you add the bit at the top and it becomes something that's really engaging and enjoyable. NSS was mentioned, and this is our personal development score for the last 2 years, and this is the first year we've had synoptic physics students coming through, and we've seen a very pleasing increase on that, that ranking, and you can see particular things like I feel confident in tackling unfamiliar problems. I mean, this is really addressing that particular one, communication skills, and giving them more confidence. So, I mean, I can't lay claim to all of the credit for all of that, but I think it is not unrelated. So, I mean, that's just a quick canter through how the course is run. And as I said, I think the key to running it is really up-to-date problems that are inherently interesting. And the repetition element, and the real time. I think real time adds that element of excitement, the opportunity to make mistakes, not feel too much blame. And it means there's no hiding place, so no one opts out of the teamwork. There's never enough time for somebody to be on their phone. Everyone's got to be doing something. So Callum's now going to tell you what he thought about it.